This is Ellen's Ninja Sight Reading Tips Part 1. Hi, I'm Ellen. I am a professional choral singer and trained classical soprano, and I am an excellent sight reader. I'm going to give you some of the tips that I use in real-world choir situations that help me to sight read as well as I do. First, I just want to say that the reason that I think so many singers are challenged by sight reading and struggle with it is because they haven't really been taught how to do it. You might say, well, they learned solfege, didn't they? Or they learned how to sing with numbers and scale degrees. Wouldn't that help them to be good sight readers? The answer is not really, because when you sight read, it's not just about being able to solfege your way through your part. It's about using your entire musical toolbox to synthesize the piece of music that is in front of you. All of the tools that you learn based on the diatonic scale, like solfege, whether it's fixed do, movable do, or numbers and scale degrees, those are not going to help you very much in these more complicated and complex musical situations where the keys are shifting or the key is virtually non-existent. So you need to have several different ways of internalizing the music and engaging with the music. You want to have a complete musical toolbox that allows you to synthesize music quickly. And one of the reasons for this is when you're sight reading, you're multitasking, you're balancing a million different elements all at once. And so you want to make things as easy as possible for your brain. You want to make sure that you have a way of looking at music that allows you to read in chunks and patterns as opposed to individual notes. Think about how we read words, right? We read words as whole words with individual letters in them, but we don't think about each letter inside the word. Music is kind of the same way. We have patterns and little chunks and, little sections that we can look at. And after a while, after enough exposure and experience with these patterns, your brain starts to recognize those as musical words, so to speak. In order to do this, you need a whole host of tools, not just one. You need to have a whole arsenal of things that will be able to help you engage with and internalize the music. And you should be able to go back and forth among those tools as needed. So don't get stuck on doing just one thing and rely on that one thing to sight read a whole piece. Since this is Sight Reading Tips Part 1, I'm going to address the pitch issue here since I've been talking about solfege. So all of these tips presuppose that you already know your key signatures, your key areas, you have a working knowledge of these things, you paid attention in theory class, or you learned them on your own, you know about modes and all of this stuff. Because number one, the first thing I always look at is the key signature, if there is one, or general key area. The sooner that you burn this information into your brain for the duration of the piece, the easier it's going to be for you. Second, I almost always read by interval, but not just intervals in a vacuum. I read by intervals in the context of the key signature. Now, it is true that when there is no key signature and the music is not tonal, you do sometimes have to read intervals in a vacuum, but when you can do it in a tonal context, that is much easier. In other words, less work for your brain, remember? The overall harmonic context and the chords in which your part is a member. So if you can look at a chord and say, oh, I have the root of the chord here, or the third of the chord here, those things can be really helpful synthesizing tools. Next, think about conventions of style. Remember those patterns and chunks that I was talking about, reading in groups of notes rather than separate notes all the time? That's where conventions of style can come in really handy. So for example, if you sing a lot of Handel, you know that he likes to write runs or melismas in a certain way. He likes to write them in little sequences. And when your brain can look at a run and see that it's broken down into sequences, it's going to have an easier time creating a whole out of those different compartments rather than treating each note of the melisma, dozens and dozens there might be, right? Rather than treating each individual note as its own thing. Last pro tip I'll give you for today regarding pitches is to read vertically. So when you are in a choir, you often have the benefit of having everyone's part in front of you in the score. You can see your part and you can see the altos and you can see the basses and you can see the sopranos, whatever it is. Use that to your advantage. Orchestral members don't have this advantage. They have to rely only on what's in front of them, in their own part, in their ears, as to what's happening around them. You have both. You can listen and you can also look. So use that visual component to your advantage and look for clues in the other parts that will help you stay in time or grab the pitches that you need for your entrances and so forth. Stay tuned for more of Ellen's pro sight reading tips.